I would like to build on what Mariska's just shared with us in this concept of resilience, but try to frame it in a more generalized way where we can apply this framework to any system that we're interested in, not just the circumstances in the Shondaman, but rather it could be a human mental resilience. It could be the collapse of a lake from poor quality into poor quality from good, or it may be the corrosion and collapse of a piece of metal as it sits underwater. Now, resilience itself is actually a relatively easy word to define. It only constitutes two major parts. There is resistance, which is the ability of a system, a thing, a person, whatever you like, to not change under stress. And then there is recovery, which is the ability of that system to return back to its normal operating boundaries when it's pushed away from it by stress. Unfortunately, despite that relative ease of definition, it's actually very difficult to measure and identify in real-world systems and in data. So what I would like to propose and share with you is an alternative way of thinking about it, using a visual or mental model, such as what we have on screen here. Let me introduce you to the stability landscape. And there's two features I want to draw your attention to. We have stable valleys and unstable peaks. If we dropped a system into this landscape, say a bright pink football, it would roll down following gravity into the bottom of the stable bowl, away from the peaks. And we can see in this landscape are two aspects of our definition. We have resistance, which is how deep the valley is, and we have recovery, which is how steep the slopes of the valleys are. So the steeper the slope, the faster it recovers. Now this is all quite hypothetical. What happens if we use the Shondaman as an example and drop it into this landscape? Well, historically, it would have transitioned and rolled into its nearest stable state, which was heavily vegetated, lots of mangrove, and that's a nice beneficial state for the Bangladeshi people as we have a protection against those water level rises. But as we deforest and urbanize in this area, the stresses start to change that stability, and it ends up transitioning into maybe an undesirable state, as we are currently experiencing in Bangladesh, where the sea level rises are now no longer being buffered by this mangrove area. This has crossed a tipping point into the undesirable state. But whilst this example is negative, what I want to share with you is the fact that actually this is a 3D environment, and there are alternative tipping points that may be positive that we can engineer into states that are both desirable and sustainable. That's not to say we shouldn't over-engineer things, maybe just leaving things alone or reverting the stresses is a positive thing to do, but we can manipulate it if we know where the boundaries between those different stable states and tipping points are. So this is where my research comes in. I work in predicting where those tipping points are about to occur, when there's resilience lost. And actually, this stability landscape gives us a clue about where we could find that. And that is, the closer to a tipping point we are, the more violently our system vibrates. It's more variable in its time series. And we can identify this. And there's a group of indicators called early warning signals that I work with that have shown to quantify this particular wobbliness and vibration. These early warning signals predict the outbreak of COVID-19 waves. They also predict the transitions from good quality water to poor quality in reservoirs, and even the onset of epileptic fits in individuals who are susceptible. But unfortunately, for us to apply this to your system, and I stress we can apply this to your system, we need an understanding of whether tipping points are actually present there, and secondly, what are the drivers that are changing our systems? What is stressing? So we can revert and minimize these changes. And this is something that the following speakers are going to explore over a range of different biomes, beginning with Lingteng in the air, and then followed by Tamsin in the aquatic realm. Thank you very much.